Alright, so we all know licensed games are the black sheep of the video game family, right? There's a very select handful that us gamers seem to give a pass, like GoldenEye and, for the real guys, Nightfire. And there's some Chronicles of Riddick game that's apparently pretty good. I don't know, I haven't played it or seen the movie. And the 2005 Best Title Award winner Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. I was severely disappointed as a kid when I found out it's like 90% first-person shooter and barely ever smacking things as a giant gorilla. Anytime anyone brings up licensed games, these and a few others are seen as the exception to the rule, which means there are a ton of other games that are the rule. Most licensed games are obvious cash grabs that try to rake in some extra money off of whatever property is being licensed out. They're typically not given that much care or attention because they're more so just trying to bank off of the associated property rather than actual quality game design. Well, this may be obvious to us grown-ups. It's more of a tragic irony that these disposable cash grabs are the games that'll attract little kids who are likely unfamiliar to the medium, and then their first exposure to what games have to offer will be this. Now in my case, I got really lucky because when I got my PlayStation 2, in a story that I may or may not share another time, I ended up picking SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, which just so happens to kick major ass and surprisingly has a super dedicated speedrunning community. I didn't have any older siblings or friends to show me what games were worth playing, so I was fortunate to just so happen to pick up one of the few good licensed games based off of a kid's TV show. I should probably get around to trying that remake. Anyway, as I was an American child growing up in the early 2000s, it goes without saying that SpongeBob was one of my favorite shows that could have ever possibly existed. Trailing ever so slightly behind it, however, was The Fairly Oddparents. Give me a weekend morning with both of these shows back to back and a bowl of Lucky Charms, and I don't think I've experienced carefree bliss like that since. Now, the two shows were obviously very different, but they do have more similarities than you might initially think, because they both have early episodes that still hold up to this day, and later episodes that straight up suck buffalo shiz. That was foul, I apologize. I remember I kinda grew out of the show a little after Poof was introduced, and the last bit of the show I can really remember when it aired was that Wishology movie trilogy, which I remember liking. The show got progressively worse over time though, partly due to them adding a really ugly dog in season 9, and then getting rid of it when fans didn't like it, and then trying again the very next season by adding in another character. Some girl who, shares Cosmo and Wanda because of a fairy shortage.
Due to overwhelming demand and fairies taking on better paying jobs in the fancy candle industry, there is a fairy godparent shortage. So now, Turner, you have to share your fairies with another fairy godkid.
Does this chick really need fairies? Timmy's always getting literally tortured by his babysitter, but this chick seems to be doing alright for the most part. Well, she and the rest of the season seem universally hated, and from the bits and pieces I've seen of it, I can't disagree. Alright, now despite all that, despite the really stupid new characters, I think the most egregious parts are that they switched to flash animation, which just doesn't look nearly as good, and that they changed the fucking theme song. How do you change something as iconic as the Fairly Oddparents theme song in the final season? And how do you make it, with your fancy high definition and flash animation, look infinitely cheaper and sound infinitely worse?
Jordan has reported there's a fairy shortage, so Timmy has to share his odd parents, Fairly Oddparents.
More than one? This should be fun!
Anyway, back in 2004, Fairly Oddparents was still good, and it would have been around then that I found myself with one of the only two licensed Fairly Oddparents console games, the Fairly Oddparents Shadow Showdown. I say found myself with because I don't remember if I bought it or rented it or borrowed it or I don't know how I got it, but all I know is that at some point I remember playing bits and pieces of it, and at some other points I never saw it again. So this game is actually a sequel to the other only Fairly Oddparents console game, Breakin' the Rules, which I never played. I may talk about it some other time, but for now I wanted to go through and try out Shadow Showdown, the forgotten Fairly Oddparents licensed game from my childhood. Both were developed by Blitz Games, who were no strangers to developing licensed video games. This was kind of their whole shtick, developing games like Bratz the movie and that weird Burger King game. Well, actually, that's kind of a lie. They actually developed all three. And yes, there were 3 of those weird Burger King games, but they also have a handful of originals under their belt, like Zapper, One Wicked Cricket, which came about after their time developing games in the Frogger series, and Glover. I was actually a little sad to see that they evidently went out of business in 2013, if for no other reason than to see that the project to cap off their 17-year reign was a Shrek alarm clock app. Now, this is actually my second time recording this entire script, and that's partially because I didn't dig deep enough into this Shrek alarm clock app. Now, I watch a lot of Nitro Rad, and Blitz Games is somewhat of a mainstay on his channel with some of the games he's reviewed of theirs, like the aforementioned Glover and Zapper, as well as Pac-Man World 3, and he had pretty positive things to say about all of those. I can't speak for all their games, but it seems like there was some creativity and passion on the staff, so it's amusing to me that their final hurrah was this Shrek alarm clock app. Now, granted, a lot of time had passed since the development of Glover and the development of this Shrek alarm clock app, but that doesn't change the fact that it's the most amazing thing I think I've ever read. I mean, look at this thing. Start your day the Shrek way. Now you can wake up and interact with everyone's favorite ogre in DreamWorks' Shrek Alarm. Shrek's Swamp is a beautiful, interactive, immersive 3D environment. Interact with Shrek, Ogre, and Ogre again. Poke Shrek to make him roar. Tickle Shrek to make him laugh. Discover other funny animations that are uniquely Shrek. Ogre-whelming extras. Get the inside scoop on ogre life with the Shrek Fact of the Day. Facebook integration. Now, my only real takeaway from all that is my immense disappointment that this app doesn't seem to be available on either app store anymore. The embedded YouTube video doesn't work, and searching for Shrek Alarm Clock app results in less than helpful videos. If anyone has any footage or experience using this app, you have to tell me. I need to know. Anyway, as I said, before their downfall, they developed the GameCube and PS2 versions of Fairly OddParents Shadow Showdown. There was a PC version developed by Imagine Engine, and there was a Game Boy Advance version developed by... I have no idea.
Developed by a company called Helix, which is very clearly mentioned on the Shadow Showdown Wikipedia page, and which Nick definitely noticed before recording this script.
Alright, so that's enough introduction. Let's just get into the game. And real quick, before I do, I've never really been one for streaming. I've always been more into the edited video side of things. Maybe someday I'll try it for myself, but here recently I've been streaming with my friend who goes by Bird President, and it's been really great because she gets to deal with actually streaming the games, and I just get to play them. So if you'd ever care to hear more of my sultry voice between videos, which I know, why would you? You can listen to it over there when we stream together somewhat semi-regularly. She's also just a really good streamer in general, and an amazing artist, and just all around way more talented than I am. So you should definitely go follow her on Twitch and Instagram and all the places. I'll link to them and her website in the description. Also, he hasn't finished it at the time of me recording this, but the thumbnail for this video is going to have been made by my friend Aaron, and if his mock-ups are anything to go by, it's going to be fucking hilarious. He also drew my little banana avatar, and yes, there is a story behind that, but I don't feel like getting into it right now. He's also an amazing artist, and you should also definitely follow him on Instagram and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Yeah, I seem to surround myself with friends who are way more talented than I am. I'm still figuring out what to do with this information. In any event, back to the game. So you start the game up, and the game's title screen is pretty boring. It's just a flat image of Timmy's house in the game title, while an occasional car, or if you're lucky, maybe a plane, may pass by. If you wait a minute, it'll show you a little montage of what the game has to offer. The game starts off with a cutscene of Timmy trying to watch the season finale of Crash Nebula, but the TV just randomly goes out. Timmy tries to wish it fixed, but Cosmo and Wanda's magic doesn't seem to be working. So Wanda busts out the emergency wand, which opens to an old film on what to do if your magic isn't working. That doubles as the tutorial. This whole intro to the game isn't half bad. The animation isn't all too impressive, but the writing and the voice acting, featuring all of the original voice actors, is pretty solid.
I doubt it, Cosmo. Luckily, I have my emergency wand.
What's that, Wanda? It says, in case of emergency, break glass.
This is an emergency.
As a catalyst to jumpstart the game, it's fine. It introduces King Oberon and Queen Titania, evidently formal royalties for the fairies, who tell you Timmy's basic moves. I like how the first action the game makes you do is press R1 to talk to Cosmo and Wanda, which the game is all too keen to tell you can do at any time.
Hi, Timmy. It's great to talk, so do it whenever you want.
This is what we in the business like to call subtle foreshadowing, as you soon learn that this game has so much dialogue. As for Timmy's moves, he can walk. Obviously, I didn't need to tell you that. He can also jump and do a double jump. By jumping and pressing circle, you do a ground pound, which you'll do often to defeat enemies and press giant buttons that are just on the floor, as they are. You can also hold circle to push and pull blocks for some basic block puzzles you'll do from time to time. I do think it's kind of silly that the game is just spoon-feeding me these controls, but leaves some out in the process. Why only tell me some of the mechanics and not all of them if you're doing a tutorial like this? So that is to say, you also have a dash you can do by holding square that the game just never mentions. I did this one a lot because Timmy's walking speed is pretty slow, but unfortunately the dash is tied to a stamina bar. I don't know what it is with games like these, limiting your ability to go fast. I was a little surprised when I played Banjo-Kazooie for the first time and saw that you could dash for as long as your little heart desires once you get the ability, which is like in the first fucking level of the game. I mean, some special moves, like some you'll get later in this game, need a stamina bar so you can't just cheese the level with them, but I don't think I'm going to cheese the game by just getting to the end of this long, empty hallway sooner. Later on though, you can upgrade the stamina bar, which essentially removes the issue. So along with the dash, you also have a dive move that the game never tells you about, and I never found myself doing this other than to catch the occasional wish star that'll try to run away from you. That's the game's main mechanic, wish stars. Since Cosmo and Wanda's magic isn't working, they can only grant wishes via the emergency magic of wish stars. They don't really explain what these things are or where they come from, but what it boils down to is that in every level there will be 3 sets of these wish stars, so 9 in total, scattered around the map, and collecting 3 of one color will allow Timmy to make a wish, which will then introduce a unique mechanic that you'll then use for the rest of the level. So even though Timmy's basic moveset is pretty basic, you do get some more gameplay variety via the wishes and the gimmicks they provide. The stars within the levels are usually structured in a very linear path. There's sometimes different paths you can take, making the level a little bit more open-ended, but the stars within them are usually all within sight, or if not that, within reach really quickly. Sometimes the stars themselves will hop around and you'll have to chase them, which is the only time the dive move, like I said, ever really came in handy. I've never played Ape Escape, but I guess I don't need to now because I'm going to assume this is exactly what it's like. Other times the stars will just be sitting idly by and the challenge, quote unquote, will be some light platforming to get them. As for the wishes themselves, they usually give you a new way to traverse or interact with the level. A good example of kind of your stock, generic, basic wish is the plane you get in the Crimson Chin level that lets you hover in the air for a bit for some light platforming challenges. A lot of the wishes were like this one. Not too fancy, but some of them did do a good job of making the level interesting. One of my favorites was the first wish you make in King Oberon and Queen Titania's haunted house level. Timmy says he needs a way to get to the upper levels of the house, so I was expecting for him to wish for like an extendable ladder or something. The previous wishes in the game didn't really get my hopes up for anything more creative than something like that. Instead, you get this like hourglass and the ability to flip the entire house upside down at will.
We pretty much explored this floor. We need to get upstairs.
But there are no stairs to the upper floor. Fairies can fly, of course. We don't need any stairs.
But I do. Stairs are fundamental to my ability to go up and down.
I have a simple solution.
Oh boy, I love it when Cosmo thinks laterally. It's a whole new definition of lateral.
If we turn the mansion upside down, then this will be upstairs, and upstairs will be downstairs. Simple.
But won't Oberon and Titania be upset if we mess with their home like that?
Who cares?
I'm convinced. I wish for a mansion upside downer. All good detectives turn crime scenes upside down.
This wish was super fucking cool and completely changed how you explore and interact with the level. I particularly liked how when you see windows pointing outside and you flip the house upside down, you see the landscape outside flip around. As cool as this wish is, and it is pretty cool, I do wish they had done more with the level flipping mechanic, however. Ideally, the roof would have provided its own set of unique platforming challenges, and there could have been some really unique scenarios, like trying to make your way across a room with obstacles on both the floor and the roof, and having to switch between the two to avoid them with the right timing and shit. That could have been cool, but they don't really do that. Instead, the roof looks just like a roof, I guess. I don't really walk on too many roofs, but it looks pretty normal, with a couple of spots that you can only get to by flipping upside down, and the occasional block puzzle with blocks that you need to move on both the roof and the ceiling. The roof and the floor to get it past platforms that are too high for it. Still though, even though I wish they had done more with it, the novelty of flipping the entire level upside down whenever you want never really got old for me. Generally though, the stars give you a small little gameplay gimmick that's used in some situational spots for level progression. In that Crimson Chin level where you get the plane, another one of those wishes is a freeze ray that's only purpose is to freeze these manatee enemies so you can use them as platforms. They never move from their one spot in the water, so it's not like a challenge to freeze them in any sort of specific or advantageous position. You just shoot them while avoiding their very easy projectiles, and then you can jump on them, and that's the whole wish. If the house flipping is the best these wishes have to offer and the manatee freezing is the worst, then I'd say most of these wishes fall somewhere in between. Individually, most of the wishes are a little bit underwhelming, but the fact that there's 3 in every level and they all function a little bit different keeps the game overall pretty interesting and fresh. There's a level that takes place entirely within Timmy's dad's dream, and one of the wishes you get in this level is a giant light bulb that just floats above your head that you use to attract these moths. These moths that are they're just kind of chilling in Timmy's dad's dream. You attract them to eat these weird disembodied suits that'll like consume Timmy and spit him out if you don't have a moth with you to eat it. So I don't know what the fuck was up with these guys, but I mean, I guess they needed something to halt your forward progression, so why the fuck not? A later wish gives you this magnet.
I wish for an ultra-powerful super magnet!
Oh dear! We've made a mistake, Timmy!
Are you kidding? This is great, guys!
But it's not an ultra-powerful super magnet!
It's a super powerful ultra magnet! No!
That you can use to suck up and spit out these little bolts, and there's one part where you have to shoot a frog with a bolt to stun it, so you can then run around it with a moth on your light bulb that the frog can't eat. So the game dips its toe into using the multiple wishes together in somewhat creative, somewhat different ways, but it just doesn't go far enough with it, in my opinion. Some of the wishes are just straight up boring. In the first level, after the tutorial, you arrive in Fairy World. The first wish, the first proper wish of the game, is this weird gun that shoots suits, like poker suits, that you use to shoot at these stacks of cards that'll form bridges or platforms. This one's actually alright. There can be a bit of a challenge finding the right suit from these fountains that are kind of littered around the stage that you'll need to shoot at the corresponding cards. The second wish, though, is this cow mask that you use to herd cows onto these switches to make bridges and then lead them to the stable. You have to awkwardly lure them around, and it's really fucking slow and cumbersome. There's a few instances where you have to lure them into these crates that'll float them over to the next spot to lure them elsewhere, and it's painfully grating, and there's literally there's no challenge here. I don't know what it is with games of this genre from around this time that loved cow herding missions so much. This was like a thing back then. This was like a fucking cliche.
Rounding off all that introspection is that most intellectual of minigames, cattle herding. By 2001 it seemed like every collectathon had to have one of these, but I've always thought that they slow the pace to an absolute crawl.
I do like how the music changes though when you put on the cow outfit. And I do like the Dairy Fairy, who's been around cows so long that at this point he can only speak cow.
This is the Fairy Dairy. Who's this guy?
He says he's the Dairy Fairy.
He's worked with cows for so long, he speaks like they do.
That's not too weird.
So, while I feel as though the obstacles that the Wish Stars provide are only serviceable at best without much of a challenge, they squeeze more from the Wish Stars by littering little bonuses and collectibles throughout the level that often require the use of either multiple wishes or wishes that you won't get until a while later in the level. It's not uncommon to start the level next to some gizmos or mechanisms that you can't interact with now, but will make sense once you get the corresponding wishes and come back to them later. None of these little bonus objectives are mind-blowingly deep, but I like that they're there, just for some extra challenge. They're more interesting to try and get than the standard objectives. In the Fairy World level, for instance, the third wish you get is a Repair-O-Tron, which you use to repair this portion of the level that you used the shooter thing to make a bridge to get around the first time. At first, I thought that this was just part of the level's aesthetic, so I actually felt a little bit proud when I realized I could repair it. And then once you do, that's how you get this cow around to this cow platform that you saw earlier but didn't know how to get a cow to, and well, now you do. So I was actually kind of enjoying the way they combined multiple wishes for this little objective. The same level later on has another challenge where you jump on these platforms that appear off the designated path, where you shoot some more card bridges across the level to get some collectibles, and then you repair some stuff and shoot some more cards, and it is fun the way they managed to get the multiple wishes to interact with each other, and I just wish they did it more because they're all optional and they're all not as interesting as they could be. There's a level at the very end of the game where monkeys have taken over, so you escape from monkey jail and make your way to the Monkey King, and yeah, these levels are kind of all over the place. This level was actually one of my favorites. It definitely felt like the most open-ended. It starts off pretty linearly, but there comes a part where you need to get these two giant bananas unpeeled at the top of this giant statue, and you can choose which one you want to go to first, and both provide decently long paths upward. At one point, I was going down one path, but ended up stepping aside to go down another path I thought would lead to somewhere small, but was actually an entirely different pathway to another route. So for a moment, I was worried I'd actually gotten lost and wouldn't make it to where I originally wanted to go. It was nice being in a level that felt this open. This level had some decent variety too. One of the wishes has you climbing all over these vines and avoiding some enemies, and it can actually be kind of difficult, but also fair. I like how Timmy's whole body faced whichever direction he was climbing. There were some attempts, big key word there, at stealth, and there's also this banana launcher wish that you use to guide some monkeys around. It was alright. The monkey wrench opened doors or moved platforms, but also served as a means to climb monkey bars. I like the multiple uses on a single wish. Using the monkey wrench in this way had a stamina bar, something that actually warrants having a stamina bar, not just moving fast. So you actually had to be cognizant of your route and the efficiency by which you climbed it. So this banana level was one of the best in my opinion, but my favorite would have to be the Crashed Nebula one. Well, I don't think it's actually based on Crashed Nebula. Vicky is just watching some kind of documentary about aliens or something when she gets sucked into the TV. Well, she meets Mark Chang, and Timmy has to go in and stop her from ruling the galaxy or something, I think. I kind of zoned out at the story at this point. The level starts off pretty underwhelming. Well, I mean, it kind of starts off pretty standard for this game, so I guess it starts off just kind of whelming. For the first wish, you get a jetpack that you move really slowly with that runs out of fuel really quickly. It's just kind of There's some platforming you do with it that's fine. There's one part where you ascend up this tower with it that I guess wasn't too bad. The second wish gives Timmy's suit the ability to emit gamma rays that'll solidify platforms around him so long as they are in the suit's vicinity. This wish actually led to some pretty decent platforming challenges where you're jumping on disappearing and reappearing platforms. But there's one part where you hit a button to open a gate and have to get over there before time runs out, and this one actually proved to be a decent little challenge for me. Like I kept fucking up over and over, and actually I felt proud when I completed it. Even though part of it was because these enemies seemed to be pretty liberal with what they consider a hit. This whole thing seemed like something out of Super Mario Galaxy, and I actually enjoyed completing it. So the first wish with the jetpack and the flying around, whatever. The second wish with the little, the little reappearing platforms, that was okay. Led to some fun. The third wish of this level, the third wish of this level, brother. This wish stole the fucking show. Now, for whatever reason, this alien base just has these launchers to shoot human-sized pinballs. And so Timmy's third wish is exactly fucking that. You literally turn into a ball and you can just roll around now. And when I say roll around, like you fucking book it. The challenges with this pinball feature some open arenas with lanes to just go crazy on. And I legitimately had a smile on my face as I was going at what felt like breakneck speeds, and the music was pumping up, and I was going fast, and I was seriously getting some Sonic vibes with this one. The challenges for this wish have you hitting these pinball bumper thingies to angle them in the right direction to hit buttons and open doors once you go through the launcher. The fast speed of the pinball and the dynamic music and the creative puzzles made this section of the level legitimately, unironically, fun to play. And I only wish this level, and specifically this portion of the level, was longer. And maybe they could have combined some of the wishes somehow. Maneuvering through the gamma ray field while controlling the pinball could have been really fun. Now, actually, if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to interject here for a brief moment to bring up the gameplay segments where you play as either Cosmo or Wanda. There are exactly 2 of them in the game, and they are these on-rails shooter bits that are incredibly random, incredibly easy, and incredibly unnecessary. If it feels like I, tacked this portion on randomly in the review because I couldn't find anywhere else to talk about it, well, now you're getting a better sense for what the segments feel like when you actually play them in the game. So when the level design and the wishes aren't getting along, you get situations like the freeze ray, where you freeze the one stationary thing that's allowed to get frozen and do nothing else with the wish. When the 2 are getting along, though, you get stuff like the pinball that has entire rooms dedicated to it. That is a good example of what all the wishes in the game could have been like, and my only wish is that they were. So anyway, as you continue making your way throughout the levels, you might be surprised to learn that those coins you're collecting actually serve a purpose outside of just the intrinsic satisfaction of collecting them. It is pretty fun the way they just kind of snap to you. You can use them to buy different items from this little store that'll usually be somewhere near the entrance of most of the levels. For instance, the first item you can buy is this radar that evidently shows you the location of wish stars, which I can't even begin to imagine somehow being at all necessary or useful or helpful, since the wish stars are like always just within plain sight anyway. But they're not all awful. The only ones I think I actually bought were these pants that increase the intensity of your ground pound, and those shoes that I mentioned like 20 minutes ago that increase the length of your dash. It's nothing extraordinary, but they could have gotten away without including anything for the coins to do, so I just want to appreciate the effort they put into the store and the fact that they actually gave the coins some kind of purpose. I'm just saying, you look back to fucking Super Mario Bros. On the NES, there was no store to spend your coins at. Yeah, what the hell, Miyamoto? No store for the coins? Fairly Oddparents Shadow Showdown on the PS2, it's got a store to spend the coins at. I'm not saying which game's better than the other, but I'm just saying that's a point in one game's favor. A theme, a little motif of this review so far, I feel, has been that it's pretty hit or miss. The graphics are no exception, although I think it's less of a hit and more of a miss. To start, the graphics are pretty bland. This game will often have floors or walls that are just a single flat color, with maybe like a brick here or there for some variety. It's not always this bad, but it can really stand out and look especially bland when it is. A point in this game's favor, though, would be the color. This game is pretty darn colorful. A lot of the levels feature vibrant colors that really pop out and complement one another. My favorite part of the game was this giant tapestry loom. I think that's what they're called, I'm not actually sure, in the haunted house level, and you run all around it and flip upside down and make your way above and beneath it, and it features some really nice colors, and it was legitimately fun to get lost making your way around this thing. The game could have definitely benefited from having more memorable moments like this one. One thing I did notice is that for the actual characters themselves, the character model faces don't really express at all outside of smiling or frowning, so it seems like they tried to substitute this by just moving them around as much and as erratically as possible. Some characters like Jorgen von Stringel, strongest fairy in the universe, just kind of flops around anytime you talk to him. As for the music in this game, it's not bad. It has primarily the same upbeat big band jazz sound that the show had, and I like how it'll often dynamically change to match the gameplay. Like I said, when you're zooming around in that pinball, the music really starts to pick up and you start rocking out, and it feels good. The music will also sometimes pick up when you start running in some levels, and using different wishes will often affect the music in one way or another. For the most part though, the music was never really bad, but relatively understated. There weren't really any tracks that played during any of the levels that caught my ear enough to stop and think about how good they are. Also, I'm not actually sure if he did the music for this game, but every time I watched the show when I was a kid, I was always enamored with the name of the guy who does the music for it. Guy Moon. Now that is a fucking name. So we've talked about gameplay, we've talked about the wishes, we've kind of talked about the music and the visuals. Let's talk about the story. The story in this game is all over the place. In the intro, Timmy's TV quits working right before the premiere of Crash Nebula, and over the course of the game, this is more or less the through line that you're ultimately working towards. In the tutorial, you meet, like I said, Queen Oberon and Queen Titania, who I first assumed were just throwaway characters for this intro, but no, they're actually prevalent throughout the whole game. So after the tutorial is when you go to Fairy World, which Cosmo and Wanda are apparently just able to do, even though the catalyst for this whole game starting is that there is no magic. Well, the reason for this is that there's apparently some royal jewel that provides all of the magic to all of the fairies. The jewel got stolen, and now you're trying to get it back, and the prime suspect is the jester to the aforementioned former king and queen, who they think stole it as revenge for getting fired. Well, you wouldn't believe that. Long story short, you fight him, no, he doesn't have the jewel, you move on. So as it turns out, that didn't even matter, because this jewel is actually only the second most powerful magical object. The first object is the fairyversary muffin that was in some of those episodes from some time. So now your goal is to bake it and use its magic to I get the jewel back, I guess. I mean, I guess the jewel lasts longer. You can't eat the jewel. In any case, Timmy just buys all the ingredients on the internet, but Vicky gives 2 of them to Timmy's parents and then just destroys the 3rd. So now your goal for the next 3 levels is to get these 3 ingredients back. And there's only 6 full levels in the game, so literally half the game is just getting these damn muffin ingredients back. So I suppose here is as good a time as any. Actually, that's probably not true. There was probably a better time where I can talk about the hub world. This is the hub world, and it's literally just a level select screen. You know how in these 3D platformers, the hub world can often feel like a level in and of itself? Yeah, not in this one. You just go to these giant screens to pick a level and play it. The various rooms of the hub are blocked off, and in this first one you can go to the Crimson Chin level for the ingredient that Vicky just straight up destroyed, or the Timmy's dad's dream level for the item that she gave him. Once you finish those 2 levels, you can go to like the next segmented room space where you can finish the haunted house level, and once you do it, you can choose between the monkey level or the pinball space level. So while you can technically select the levels you want to play, you have to play them all anyway to beat the game, and you're only ever given the option to pick one first out of a set of 2. But I mean, I guess even a little bit of choice is better than no choice at all. So the Crimson Chin level, the Monkey level, and the Dad's Dream level are the levels where you actually get the muffin ingredients. In the Haunted House level, you're just kind of looking for clues as to who stole the jewel, and here you meet this guy called the Cranky Old Chamberlain, who was the King and Queen's steward. You find out that the King and Queen stole their own jewel because they want to rule the human world, and that Chamberlain guy, or who we're led to believe is him, is the one evidently calling the shots. He's the puppet master. And in the Crash Nebula level, you just kind of have to stop Vicky for like this one-off little thing that doesn't serve the plot, actually. But alright, finally, you get all the muffin ingredients and you bake that shit. They decide to go to the broadcast station that stopped Timmy's show from the beginning of the game. Here they find Oberon and Titania already tied up, and they tell Timmy that the Chamberlain told them that he would make them rulers of the earth if he got the jewel. And part of his plan was making the TV shows people were watching come to life. Yeah, see, when Vicky got sucked into the alien documentary, and also Timmy's mom, she was watching a nature documentary when she got sucked into her show, so this is like the only 2 times it happens in the game, and I'm not really sure how it's supposed to help the bad guy take over the world, but whatever. So at this point in the game, I'm more so just waiting for it to be over than anything else, but I'm still following along for the most part. And then the plot just dives straight into left field with a bunch of completely random shit, and I'm just going to read directly from the plot summary on the Fairly OddParents wiki. God, I love online wikis. To explain how the game ends. So, this is your spoiler warning for Fairly OddParents Shadow Showdown for PlayStation 2 and GameCube from 2004. Viewer be warned. Then the Chamberlain shows up, confusing Timmy about the sudden appeared shadow known as the Anti-Chamberlain. The Chamberlain says that he has a confession to make. The Anti-Chamberlain then comes to life, saying, Then the King and Queen say how it was the Anti-Chamberlain who tricked them. The Chamberlain says that the Anti-Chamberlain was his shadow, and the Anti-Chamberlain himself said that he had a cruel plan to reverse the way shadows work. Shadows wearing their casters, not the other way around. Timmy reduces the Anti-Chamberlain to a puddle after a fight, but it comes back to life. Then Timmy races the shadow toward the muffin. Oberon grabs it and throws it to Titania, who throws it to Timmy. Timmy eats it and wishes everything back to normal. But then everything is okay. Timmy misses his Crash Nebula finale, but there's magic now, so he wishes for a tape of it, which he could have done at any point anyway once the magic is back, so that kind of invalidates this whole race against the clock thing. And they all watch it happily ever after. So that was a nice ending to like the initial kickstarted plot, but I have no idea what the fuck any of this nonsense about the Chamberlain and his shadow and the Anti-Chamberlain was about. Nowhere else in the game do I recall anything about shadows like being a thing, part of this story. I mean, I think that idea could be cool if it was expanded upon. Shadows wanting to wear their casters, maybe they're envious of their human brethren that get to walk freely, so they want to be the ones in charge for once, or something like that. I don't know. That could be cool, but not when it's tacked on to the very end of this story. That comes completely out of left field and catches you completely off guard. I also wouldn't put it past me if there was an underlying subtext about shadows and their relationship with humans underneath this whole story that just went completely over my head, so I guess take what I say with a grain of salt. But if I had to guess, I would say it's probably something bigger they had planned, but for whatever reason they had to end it the way they did. Or maybe they really did just write it coming out of nowhere and they thought it would be, oh, what a twist! I mean, I'm sure anyone who finished this game probably didn't really care too much about the story, but as it stands, I at least appreciate the effort they did put into it and the presentation as a whole. The fact that they wrote as much as they did, and that they got the original voice actors to say all the lines throughout the entire game, makes me think that at least some people genuinely did care and wanted this game to be a fun experience, even if it did have a completely random twist, at the end. So if you make a retro video game review checklist, one thing we're missing right now is boss fights. Every stage ends with a boss fight, and they're all pretty lame. Pretty much all of them don't involve interacting with the boss directly, but rather running around some kind of arena and hitting switches to somehow damage it. The first one in Fairy World against the Jester involves hitting a switch to change the suit from a fountain to use that suit shooter to hit him with whatever suit is above his head. The one in the Crimson Chin level is against H2 Olga. Don't worry about who she is, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't even really feel like a boss fight, more like an obstacle course, because you go around this arena hitting switches to pollute the water she's sitting in. You barely even see her during this fight, and I don't even think she does anything to actively try and hurt you. She kind of stands there. So it's not really much of a fight, but I mean, for what it's worth, it's not a terrible final gauntlet either. It has some decent platforming, but the only wish you really use is the one to freeze those manatees. It would have been a good opportunity to make use of all 3 of the wishes you got this level to use in the final battle. In Timmy's dad's dream, you're just running in a circle from Timmy's dad, who's in a giant mech that I think was from that one episode that one time. You just run around and hit switches and then smack him with a giant fucking wrecking ball. That actually doesn't hurt him at all. You need to hit him with that magnet gun thing to actually damage him. You just do that 3 times and then you win. I did kind of like the music during this fight. It ended with a cutscene that had no music or sound effects though.
Ego in turmoil must wake up.
Dad?
This actually happened a couple times throughout my playthrough, and I'm not sure if it was something wrong with the ROM or my emulator, or if the actual game just didn't have music or sound effects for these cutscenes. Whatever the case, it was amusing if nothing else. So those 3 bosses were nothing special. In fact, I might go so far as to say they weren't even very good. The boss in the haunted house though, that was pretty fucky.
Something's fucky.
To start though, I also liked the music during this fight as well. For whatever reason, the boss fights had pretty decent music. You know, at least decent enough for me to feel the need to bring it up. But okay, look, you're in this room with these boxes, right? And this monster that's totally not 2 people in a costume together. So I figured I would have to wait for this monster to float on top of the boxes so I could flip the entire room upside down and the boxes would fall on them. I had no idea what else I might need to do, so I must have tried this like 20 times and just nothing would happen. I put all the boxes right next to each other, so I had the maximum surface area to hit this thing, and nothing would happen. I spread them evenly apart. I even put the boxes on these black tiles in case that was like some kind of key or something, and when I flipped it, nothing would happen. And then randomly, I'm not sure what the fuck I did different, but it worked, and the damn thing actually took damage. I was fucking ecstatic. I'm not sure what the fuck caused it to work sometimes and not others, but eventually I managed to actually damage this thing the 4 times I needed to for it to fucking die and go to hell where it belongs. It took me like 2 minutes apart for it to actually work between hits, and it seemed to only work when the monster would disappear and then right after it would reappear. And I'm not sure what was going on here. It might have been a coding error. It might have been very clearly telegraphed and I'm just really stupid. But whatever the case, it was definitely the most frustrating boss because I really had no idea what I was doing wrong for like a majority of the fight. For the Crash Nebula level, you're just trying to beat Vicky and Mark Chang and you just need to hop around to different buttons while using the UV suit wish. This was probably one of my favorites, if for no other reason than the suddenly reappearing green UV platforms unsurprisingly makes for some fun platforming. I do wish you could have used the pinball though, because rolling around in that thing was always fucking awesome. I mean, you do use it, but only to get in one of those cannons to automatically smack Vicky's platform. This whole fight was alright, but repetitive because, not unlike the other bosses, you just do the same thing 3 times. At least the thing you do over and over was kind of fun, unlike that other boss fight. In the monkey level, you fight the Ape King who captured Timmy's mom. You just throw bananas at him to stun him before you climb up to his platform and ground pound him. You do it 3 times, it's repetitive, you get the drill, but at least this one is supplemented with some funny dialogue.
Oh, so now you bounce on apes for fun. Is that what we taught you, young man? Is it?
And then you have the final boss, which is the Shadow of the Chamberlain. So you fight really the antagonist of the game, who was introduced to you about a good minute before you fight him at the very end of the game. Jokes aside though, unlike the other boss fights that only really use just 2 of the 3 wishes at most that you've acquired throughout the level, the final boss actually makes use of all 18 wishes you've acquired throughout the entire game. Again, it's more of an obstacle course than a traditional fight, but you go through a gauntlet of stages that makes use of all the wishes you've used in new ways, and you have to combine different wishes from different levels throughout the game. And yeah, you're not seeing any footage of this final battle because you already know that I'm lying. The final battle is just you in a tiny room with no wishes, smacking buttons on the floor in order to stun the Shadow Man so you can damage him by smacking his feet. It's pretty underwhelming and disappointing, especially considering the multitude of wishes you've acquired throughout the game that could have been used together in some capacity again. Like, you've already designed the wishes, they already work within the game. Why not just bring some back with a couple extra obstacles to play with them in? Why do you have to have a shitty final boss? If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. Brevity is the soul of wit. These proverbs and quotes mean absolutely nothing to me as I enter into my 40th minute talking about a PlayStation 2 game about the Fairly Oddparents. And with that being said, I might as well, at this point, talk about the collectibles that you'll be collecting throughout the game. The only real platforming challenges that are actually kind of interesting. So the stickers you collect are, they're just that. They're literally stickers. They go in this sticker book that you can go to in the extras menu, and they just kind of sit there. To be fair, though, the game essentially tells you as much when you pick them up.
A sticker! They don't do anything, but they're fun to collect!
You can read a short little biography for each one, and no, it's not lost on me that I wrote short little biography, and maybe that is why this video is 40 fucking minutes long. But in any case, you can read a short little eensy beensy tiny, I can't think of any more synonyms for little biography for each one and learn absolutely riveting information like where the Dairy Fairy was born. As a reward for a collectible, they don't really do much. In fact, they don't really do anything, but again, the game doesn't really pretend otherwise, and they can be fun to collect, and it can be satisfying, and they can be somewhat funny, and they can take up 5 minutes of your time going through some of them, so they're fine. The videotapes you collect throughout the game, which were much more sparse, offer just that. Various videos you can watch. The actual videos themselves are all various clips from the show. So say if you ever wanted to watch that one clip from that one episode of The Fairly Oddparents where Timmy's dad gets beat up by a luchador while wearing a giant pencil, but you just can't find it online, all you need to do is download a PS2 emulator and then the Fairly Oddparents Shadow Showdown ROM and collect the first videotape collectible and then go to the extras in the menu and then watch it. Easy peasy. There's also a clip from that one episode where Timmy somehow wishes for there to be no sound, so the entire episode is just told through visuals and various sound effects and musical cues. I always liked that episode because it showed how vibrant the show could be with just its audio and various sounds and noises alone. There's also one for one of the Chip Skylark songs, but not one I really remember.
And find your voice, just find your voice. You know you got that choice, now go find your voice.
Maybe one of the videotapes I missed had My Shiny Teeth and Me in it. Now that would be a fucking reward.
My shiny teeth that twinkle, just like the stars in space. My shiny teeth that sparkle, adding beauty to my face.
There's also trailers and ads for various other Nickelodeon products, which these you can conveniently watch without actually needing to collect anything. One of these, though, is a behind the scenes of the game, and it's actually decently interesting. Like I've said, it actually seems like the developers sincerely cared and wanted to make something at least better than shovelware. You can see a younger Butch Hartman before he sold out to making clickbaity YouTube videos and questionable Kickstarters. I do think it's cool that they got the actual voice actors to voice all of their many lines. It's painfully obvious when games based on pre-existing properties don't do that.
No more Krusty Krab means no more fry cooking for you.
Also, Darren Norris is an amazing voice actor with an awesome range who does not get enough credit for all the work he's done.
In Fairly Oddparents, I play Cosmo.
We're spelunking! I love that word. What's it mean?
Dad, Timmy's dad. Ooh, we're going to the movies. It's like the best thing in the world that ever happened. And
Jorgen von Strangle, the toughest theory in the universe.
If you've watched Nickelodeon, you've heard and maybe seen Darren Norris, and he's fucking awesome.
Think Lisa Zemo's hot?
I can't answer that due to the fact that I'm 40.
So as far as bonuses and extras go, it's alright, I guess. I would have preferred extra levels or more gameplay, but these are fine, and I appreciate that they did something when, with this game, they could have gotten away with doing less. To pile on to the praise train and give this game some more, as I've said, this game has quite a bit of voice acting. All of the original characters have the original voice actors reprising their roles, and they definitely make the most out of it. I rarely heard any repeated voice lines. The performances themselves were all really good too, and would have fit right in with an actual episode. The writing itself ain't half bad either. The characters all behave like they should, and they got a chuckle out of me a good few times.
Stop the Babysitter Ray countdown, Mickey! The jig's up! raised charge meter only shows 6%. Aren't you supposed to wait until it's practically finished before you burst in and ruin my plans? Lesser heroes, maybe. But Crash Nebula believes in efficiency.
My only potential issue is that there may be a little too much talking. The characters really never shut the hell up, but in this case, I found it more charming than irritating, and I actually enjoyed all of the talking. So, if the amount of pages in my Google Docs document is anything to go off of, or the amount of time I can clearly see has passed in my Adobe Audition recording, then I will have talked about the Fairly OddParents Shadow Showdown for about 40 minutes, which is about 40 minutes longer than I would wager anyone will have ever have cared to hear about it. But I wanted to revisit and share a game from my childhood that I remembered enjoying, and that I feel nobody else would ever really talk about otherwise. Like seriously, when was the last time anyone brought this game up? Not that it's necessarily worth talking about, it was a licensed kids game from the mid-2000s that wasn't particularly interesting and groundbreaking, but it is a piece of history that some people did put their time and effort into. Overall, despite its flaws, I had fun with this game. I wouldn't necessarily say it's worth taking the time to seek it out and play it, but for the kind of game that it is, it was a lot better than it could have been or necessarily needed to be. I think it's just worth remembering, if nothing else. Hey, so this video was a long time coming. I actually recorded the gameplay portion of this back in February of 2020 before, back when we knew there was a virus going on elsewhere, but before it really took over the US and the rest of the world in the way that I think we were expecting. So, funnily enough, you would think that'd be perfect, ample time to really, go in hard on making stuff like this, but it was kind of the opposite for me. I got lazy and just kind of, decided to play games instead and focus on other stuff. But there's one video that you might have seen of mine that really blew up, like in January of this year, which is the Pop Tropica one. So if you're here from that, thank you so much. That one just out of nowhere really started skyrocketing in views, which was really, really cool to see. Really exciting. I was constantly, and still do, checking the analytics and the comments, and everybody has been super supportive and, really had positive things to say about it. And that really got my motivation up to continue this video, which I had started, but just hadn't really worked on much. And even with that, I do need to kind of improve my workflow, and, just work harder on stuff. But that kind of got me to finish this one. And I hope you like it. In retrospect, it seems like a silly topic. It's in fact, it is overly long. Less is more, and that's something I could learn to, take to heart. But it seems kind of like a silly topic for a video, for me at least at this point. But I wanted to go ahead and do it because I do remember this game, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about a single game instead of, multiple things at once like I've kind of been doing. So I hope you like it. And, I'm trying to, as I make more stuff, up my production quality. I'm constantly learning more about the different software I'm using, and hopefully each video is going to be slightly better than the last. So I hope you like this one. And any criticism or comments you might have about it, I'll definitely take into consideration for future ones, because this was really fun. And getting back into the flow of it really reminded me how much I enjoy making these things, especially with the new audience that came from that one video. Yeah, if you're here from that, again, thank you so much, and I hope you stayed to watch this one. I'm going to make more stuff. If you have any ideas as well, let me know. Oh, speaking of the Pop Tropica video, if you ever get to this point, I might as well tell you two things in particular that I wanted to acknowledge. First, I don't know how I missed the owl. I had a lot of comments telling me the owl was in Mordred's lair the first time I went down there, and I missed it because when I leave the lair, he's outside. And I comment on where did he come from, but I just totally overlooked it, I suppose. And then the other one, what was the other one? People asking the old islands are gone. I think some of those people didn't get to the end of my video where I comment on that myself, but that's okay. Yeah, the old islands. I don't know why. I logged into my old account, which I was able to remember, fortunately, and I had all the old islands. And as I was playing, I came back to continue Astro Knights Island, and all the old islands were gone. And I only had the new ones that I don't know. So I don't know why that happened. Apparently that's like not an uncommon thing. A lot of people were complaining about the old islands being gone, but it was weird how that happened in the middle of my playthrough of the game. I come back one day and it's gone. I think it was tied, or I'm wondering if it was tied to my old account, and that's why I could play them, but then I don't know why they just disappeared after a while. So in any event, I didn't get to finish that island and the old islands are gone. Someone linked me a page or a video on how to play the old islands. So maybe at some point, if there's a way to do that, I'll go back and either continue that or play some of the other old islands, because a lot of people were telling me they'd like to see a sequel to that. And I think that'd be really fun, because I really like Pop Tropica. And there's other islands that I somewhat remember. Even if I don't remember them, it'll be fun to play them for the first time and make a similar video. I would have liked to have made a video playing other Flash games that I remember from the time, but Flash is no longer with us anymore, so that might be difficult, but I might. I'm sure there's ways around it to play some of those old games. So yeah, playing old, and nostalgic games from that time, people seem to enjoy, and I enjoy making them because I'm a really sentimental and nostalgic guy. So I'll look into that. But yeah, just wanted to say again, hope you enjoyed this one. It's been a process to finish it because, good God, some of these. I'm also just a slow worker, but a lot of these videos just take a while, but it's a fun process and kind of cathartic in a way. It lets me unwind and, focus on something that I enjoy doing. So anyway, yeah, again, hope you enjoyed, and hope you stick around for future stuff, because I'd love to make more, and hope you're there for them. So thanks again, and see you for the next one.